Wait. Jimmy on the beat, boy. Jimmy on the beat, boy.
What's going on, everybody? I'm John J. II, and this is the Gin College Podcast. I'm joined alongside with Cody Almasi, Gin Analytics. Cody, how we doing today, man?
Doing good, man. You know, just got my second dose of the vaccine, fully vaccinated, fully feel good about being unmasked out there in the free world. But yeah.
You're protected against all variants, am I right? Is that the case?
I don't think that's how it goes, but
oh man. You'd like to be able to go into that thinking that, but hey, it's the world we live in, right?
yeah.
Hey, we got a lot going on in the college football landscape. We're wrapping up the regular season here with the conference championships. Championship week is among us, and we couldn't be more excited. Lots of huge games on the docket, lots of opportunities for the bettors, and we're super excited about it. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, especially involving the college football playoff and how teams are going to be moving around. You got the coaching carousel, which we're going to take a dive and look into that. But yeah, a lot of stuff to cover. We want to really emphasize the games that are going to be coming up this weekend, though. So a lot of emphasis will be put on those games individually. But let's start with some coaching changes. Cody, I heard of some coaching changes that have taken place along with some transfer news. Let's start with these coaching changes. The coaching carousel is really getting more interesting as the regular season finishes up. Tell me about some of these coaching changes and how they'll affect the college football landscape.
So on the GSN and on our Monday show, we've already covered Lincoln Riley heading to USC, Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame, going to LSU. But now Notre Dame, they said they wanted to target Luke Fickell, and I think this speaks to what I believe to be true, that Luke Fickell is at Cincinnati to stay. Notre Dame, they promote defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman to head coach, and it's not only a price cut for them, so they don't have to go offer anybody an astronomical amount of money, which a lot of these schools are having to do to get people away from where they've been for a long time. but it's also who the players wanted. All the players, I've seen them on their social medias tweeting or putting Instagram posts of them dapping up Marcus Freeman. And he's a young dude, and the players are going to play for him. So it doesn't always go how programs want it to do when it's a player's coach, but I think that this is the right call for Notre Dame. And if by chance they do get to sneak in, I'll be rooting for them, because without a head coach and with Gary Barta against you, you're the underdog, and I'm always going to be rooting for that. Kalen DeBoer, he coached Fresno State the last 2 years, the COVID year, and then this year. Jay Kaner, he also entered the transfer portal from Fresno. It is speculated heavy that he is going to follow Kalen DeBoer to Washington to become a University of Washington Husky. So those are some of the bigger names. Also, Gary Patterson's replacement, Sonny Dykes, he comes from SMU. And besides that trouncing given to them by the Cincinnati Bearcats, SMU has had a great season behind Tanner Mordecai and Sonny Dykes. And yeah, then we can start talking a little bit about some transfers. We got Jay Kaner, like I mentioned, big arm, especially to begin the season, had a couple key wins against UCLA and San Diego State. Adrian Martinez, he's someone we're a little bit more familiar with, Nebraska Cornhusker. Feels like he's been throwing the ball for them for a long time, but he's not going to the NFL yet. He is going to a different team in college, and he's using his COVID year of eligibility to do so. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Some of these guys are going to be like an NFL team getting a really good quarterback to plug into their team instead of just, somebody who's been sitting on the bench. It's kind of like a free agency aspect to the college sport almost. So keep an eye on where these guys land and see what kind of impacts they make going forward.
Yeah, definitely. Considering transfers, coaches alike, as far as movement, I think that's why you see a lot of these big contracts going out, James Franklin, Mel Tucker, things like that. You want to lock in your coaches. You see the Brian Kelly. I think a lot of these teams are trying to avoid the Brian Kelly scenario happening, and coming back on the flight. We talked about this a little bit on the GSN pod and briefly, on the Monday pod, but you don't want to see that happen. So that's why you see these max contracts coming out, and you don't want to see anybody try to opt out. You want to see these coaches make this team their school. This is their program they're going to build. They're going to stick with this program for a long time. They got some longevity left. They're usually younger guys. They got some years left in them. So I think like a Brian Kelly, he might not have 10 years left of coaching in him as far as that's how he sees it. He wants to finish with a school where he thinks he can find more prominence. And I thought a lot of people thought that was at Notre Dame. Obviously, he didn't think that. So that offer must have been very good and lucrative for Brian Kelly to accept that on the flight back without much thought. And I proposed the possibility that there might have been an ultimatum in there to, you better, you got to accept this deal within the next, 24 hours or the deal's off the table. One of those deals.
You got a second choice. Yeah. And waiting.
Yep. So there's that's up for speculation, but anything's possible, especially, money talks, bullshit walks. We all know that. So without further ado, let's get right into the games. Let's a lot of this stuff is speculation. It's going to change the landscape, and as the year progresses, we're going to be talking about a lot more coaching carousel stuff, as well as transfers, recruits, and a lot of that stuff. That'll give us a lot of content going into the off season to talk about. So let's start with the AAC championship. What do we got to look for in this game? Houston against Cincy. Obviously a big matchup. Cincy, this is probably their last. It's everyone's last final matchup. If you're in the top 4, if you're looking good in the college football playoff, you're going to a conference title game, this is your last stop to be able to prove yourself and to really, it's that one last test before you get to the final exam, which is the college football playoff itself. What does Cincy have to look out for? Considering Houston's coming in this game, really nothing to lose. They have everything to gain with being in the position to kick Cincy out of that top 4 spot. What do you see it happen in this game?
Yeah, just the fact that Cincinnati's 12-0 and is sitting right there at 4 on the cusp of being maybe jumped for the college football playoff, that final spot. They're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. Houston, like you said, nothing to lose. They have an 11-game win streak going right now, though, which is the 3rd longest active win streak, second only behind Houston, which is at 12. Cincinnati at 12, and then Georgia at 16. So 2 of the hottest teams in college football right now when you look at it in that light. And I'm just hoping for a good show. I want Houston to give Cincinnati a challenge. I hope that some of the playmakers like Marcus Jones, he's somebody I wanted to highlight. A lot of players are tied for first in interceptions in the league for 5. There's about 5 to 10 guys sitting right there at first, and Marcus Jones is one of them. He's also taken 2 kick returns and 2 punt returns to the house. So not only does Desmond Ridder have to account for him, so do the kickers and punters of the Bearcats as well, because he can score on you in a second, and that right there is a game changer. If Houston can capitalize on a turnover or take a special teams play to the house, that could be what they need to knock the Cincinnati Bearcats off. And if they take a loss, they're definitely out. And I'd like to see a non-Power 5 team make it, but it also just proves if they don't make it, it proves that there needs to be expansion.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to paint the picture. You got to see what teams are available. A non-Power 5 team making it into the top 4 to even be contending for the college football playoff in one of those spots is somewhat unheard of up until this year. And that it already speaks to the point that expansion is needed. It's essential for just the growth of the drive to make it to the college football playoff and for more teams to make it possible for them, regardless of record. You can see some teams with 3 losses trickle in there into the top 12 spots if they're good enough. So there's a lot to be determined, a lot to be said. But for these non-Power 5 teams, especially Cincinnati, this is really, win or lose in this game. Win or lose, how far they go in the college football playoff, granted they make it, is really somewhat irrelevant just because they've been able to make it to this point. They've been able to defy all the odds. And
kind of shatter that ceiling that is associated with non-Power 5 schools.
Shatter the ceiling, shatter the stigma, and they're doing their best to contend for a championship, for a title. And that says a lot about the conference. That'll give a lot to the conference, being a non-Power 5 conference. That'll give them a lot more of strength. I think it'll give them strength going forward. As far as, just respect. You look at an SEC team, you can throw any SEC team at, the dartboard and, they're SEC team. So that label will automatically give them, more of a ranking, more trump, I guess, whatever you want to call it, over a non-Power 5 team or even a non-SEC team. So that's got to be considered as well.
Definitely. I know that Desmond Ridder, he's the big star of Cincinnati. That's who everybody knows. Projected to go, I think, second round, right around 46, somewhere in that pick range. But Clayton Tune, he's the guy who throws the ball, gunslinger for Houston. He has very similar numbers, and he hasn't thrown an interception. He's only thrown 2 interceptions over the last 2 games, thrown for 2,000 yards and 19 touchdowns. He has his hands full with the Bearcats defense. That's really who I wanted to talk about here. Ahmad Sauce Gardner, he's probably the player with the most notoriety. He's a projected first-round pick in next year's draft, but he's one of 4 guys who at least had 3 picks on the Cincinnati defense. Deshaun Pace, Kobe Bryant, and Arquan Bush also all have 3 picks. Devon Pace has 4, Deshaun Pace, that is. And Cincinnati's also won 26 at home, and the AAC is one of those championships where the higher seeded team gets to host it. So 26 straight at home, that's a hard streak to snap. So I'm going to be looking forward to what happens in this game.
Yeah, I think we can expect, and thinking about all the games collectively going on this weekend, I think we can expect some upsets to happen. I don't know where they're going to fall or where they're going to happen at, but it's a real safe bet to be like, oh, you know what, Cincinnati, they'll take care of Houston. No worries there. But that's what everyone wants you to think. I think you got to be, especially if you're Cincinnati, if you're any of the teams that are in the college football playoff, you secured your spot, and now you've come to this game. You just have to finish the job, make it to a spot, and even if you lose the first game in the college football playoff, at least you made it there. So that mentality of being, we're not done yet, 2-0 is the 2-0 Kobe Bryant mentality we talked about on Wednesday. Job's not finished yet. So that goes for every single one of these teams, and there's a lot of teams that will have to have that mentality that are in this list of games this weekend. That's what makes this weekend so important with all these major championships going on within the conferences. So I think we can move on now. We'll look for Cincy to win this game, but it's no easy task going against Houston, and they're not a scrub team by any stretch of the word.
You think Houston covers the 10.5?
I really wanted SMU to cover the 10.5, and since he blew that right out of the water. So, I think with it being a conference title game, I'll take Houston plus 10.5. We'll ride it out. Let's see it
I
happen.
like it.
I still think Cincy wins the game, but I don't think it's going to be by as significant a margin as it was with SMU. So we'll focus on that. I'll take Houston plus 10.5. Let's ride that into the sunset. Let's move on to the Big 12 championship. Baylor, Oklahoma State, the only two teams that had the nuts to beat Oklahoma. And they made it happen in stylish fashion. I think this is going to be a great game. This is really a game of toughness. It's a game of strength. Which team is tougher? I guess what type of intangibles would you take away from this game? What type of attributes come from this game? Just looking at it with what we have right now.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. This is the first time that Oklahoma State has had to play the same team twice in one season since 1908. So that's already a tough thing to do when you have to do it on a regular basis. So when you're not used to having the game plan for a team twice and them to adjust to how you played each other in the first game, I think there's a lot of unpredictables that go into this game. The Sooners are a 5.5-point favorites. Baylor, they pretty much dominated. I mean, not Sooners, the Aggies, Oklahoma State Aggies. The Baylor Bears dominated Sooners when they played. Only held them to just 7 points. But when these two teams played first, the Bears lost 14-24. The Cowboys kind of handled them at home. So we'll be seeing how the Bears can adjust to that. They were without their leading tackler, Terrell Bernard, and we'll see if he can be a difference maker since he was out in the first game, if he can add anything to it. But it's going to be Jerry Bohannon versus Spencer Sanders. They both can run with the ball when they need to, make things happen, and they both can pass too pretty well. Their numbers are very similar, 2,100 passing yards both, and they're both over 300 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. So it's going to be who can overcome or manipulate the other defense in a more efficient way. I think that Jerry Bohannon has a tougher job. The Oklahoma State defense does not get enough recognition. They rank top 5 in, I think, points allowed, yards allowed, and then they lead. After Bedlam, they lead the nation in sacks. They lead Pitt by 1. They have 47, and Pitt has 46. So if Malcolm Rodriguez and the rest of the people over there on the Oklahoma State defense can get after Abram Smith and Jerry Bohannon, it'll be tough for the Bears to get away with a win.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this game is pretty much up in the air. Both these teams beat Oklahoma. They know what it takes. The Cowboys just beat them in Bedlam, and Baylor beat them earlier in the year, pretty much erasing their chances of making it to a college football playoff. They never found themselves, Oklahoma that is, never found themselves in that top 4 spot. They almost did. They were knocking on the door. Now Oklahoma State's knocking on the door, and now it's up to Baylor to ruin their chances of making it if something goes awry in the current top 4 standings in the college football playoff rankings. So, I mean, it's up to Baylor really to be the bearer of don't get this mixed up. This isn't a pun. The bearer of bad news. You don't want them to be the bearer of bad news in this game if you're Oklahoma State. So you got to be focused on that. Just get the job done. This is one of your more toss-up games. This could go either way. It's a battle of the offenses. And you made a good point. Which defense is going to make a stand against both these strong offenses? And nobody's really seemed to be able to do it so far. A couple teams here and there have been able to do it against these two teams. But who's going to be the team between these two to really get the job done? Oklahoma State is still very much in it as far as the running for the top 4 spots. So don't count them out yet. They have to win this game against Baylor, though. If they don't win this game, they're out. So that really opens the door for then Notre Dame. Then even bring Ole Miss into the conversation at that point. So a lot of things can happen. A lot of shifting can happen this weekend. So that has to be considered. And even teams that aren't in the top 4 right now has to be considered, with those teams as well, because these teams are knocking on the door and you could easily send them, to the back of the line if they lose, if they don't come through this weekend. So there's
spoilers in every game. Like in Alabama, Georgia, we're about to talk to next. They're both kind of spoilers of one another. I don't remember Championship Saturday and Friday ever looking as intense as it does this year.
No, with so much at stake, so much to play for, I've never seen this happen before. And it's really even more intense because we haven't seen the expansion within the college football playoff yet. And I still think we'll see that. We'll still see that type of, where it's really down to the wire. We'll see that even with the 12 teams. So since it's the 4 spots, you're fighting for those 4 spots before the expansion happens. The proposed expansion, nothing's set in stone yet. Conversations have been taking place, but we got to focus on, what teams need to get the job done this weekend to even have a chance at making it in those top 4 spots. And it's basically win or go home for all these teams. And except for maybe one of these teams that we're going to talk about next. Let's move on. Let's talk about the SEC championship between Georgia and Alabama. Now, this is where I kind of bring in that important caveat because some people have said even if Georgia loses, are they still in the top 4 being lossless? What do you say to that?
Unfortunately, I think so. I think that they probably slide back to 4 at that point, and then everybody else, depending on what happens with the other games being played, would shuffle up. But yeah, just going perfect all season long and not really ever having anyone challenge you for the number 1 spot, I think. Just like we seen, it was last year when Clemson and Notre Dame had to play, and Notre Dame was riding high going into the ACC championship game, and Clemson beat them pretty convincingly, and then Notre Dame still snuck in at 4. So I think we see a similar scenario this year if the Bulldogs do, in fact, take an L. And I was just listening to our very first show today before we started, and when we were talking about Georgia-Clemson and how much that game meant. I mean, Georgia only beat Clemson 10-3, and it could have gone differently. So it's just pretty insane to think about where Georgia is now and where we're talking about. And I said that every year Kirby Smart is so close. He's just right there. And any year he could put together. So there's a good chance this might be the year.
Yeah, it might be. That was an important statistic that I learned when I was writing the script. And Kirby Smart's never beat Nick Saban before. That's an important statistic to look at because this Georgia team probably has more potential to beat Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide than ever before. So there's a lot to ride on just if you're Kirby Smart, let alone Georgia, let alone everything else that's riding on it. And even if you lose this game, which is, I mean, that's the upset right there. If Bama beats Georgia, that's the upset to look out for. But if that happens, Georgia, I mean, based on what we've been speculating on, they're not completely out of the race yet. They could find Alabama again in the college football playoff, if everything goes as planned. So, I mean, there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot at stake.
Definitely like, and I think it was 2018 when they met in the SEC championship and they had a great game. Bama won. They both still get in. I think Alabama played Notre Dame to get to the final, and Georgia beat Oklahoma in a nail biter. And that was the game where Nick Saban subbed in Tua for Jalen Hurts. And that was one of the craziest national championship games I've ever seen. So we could be in store for a replication of that. But yeah, both these teams, I think Alabama might be able to get it done. If they can come out and maybe get the first 1 or 2 scores and get some breathing room, I think Georgia will have a hard time fighting back. They've never had to they trailed, I think, to Clemson and maybe in one other game just to like the first touchdown or a field goal. So they haven't really had to play from behind too much this year. So if they find themselves in that situation, I think the defense is going to do what they need to do. I'm just curious how Stetson Bennett and then the offense responds. It's just weird seeing, I mean, Brock Bowers, all power to you, but seeing a tight end lead your whole offense and receptions when the rest of the college football landscape, you're watching teams have, like Alabama, they have 2 guys over 1,000 yards in the wide receiver category. So it's just they're a different team, but usually these teams with such great defenses end up proving that defenses do win championships. So they might prove me wrong.
It's true, yeah, and you could kind of consider, maybe there was a shift after losing JT Daniels to Stetson Bennett, and bringing him in there. You can kind of see the unorthodox mentality with the Georgia offense, and it's obviously worked for them, right? It's worked for them up until this point, and hopefully it will going forward for them. But you can never count Alabama and the Crimson Tide and Nick Saban out. You can never count them out. We've learned the hard way with that multiple times over the course of the past, and you gotta always consider them, especially this game. I guess, would you consider this a rivalry game?
I mean, they don't play each other as damn near much as they should. These two should have to play each other every year, in my opinion. But it's definitely when they meet, it always has pretty big implications, even if it's regular season. But lately, it's been in the SEC championship or even further on down the line. So
Yeah.
when you meet with that much on the line this frequently, it definitely you have some animosity towards one another.
Yeah, there's got to be some animosity, even if it's not, it might be kind of a low key rivalry just because with the division, scenario with that type of format, you don't see this. You might not see these two teams play in any given year. You're going to expect it because they're going to be at the top of the SEC on both of their respective divisions usually. But you can never count on it happening for sure. Like most rivalries happen, you at least have one game against your rival during the regular season. So that could kind of discount the credibility of those saying this is a rivalry game. I just wanted to ask you that just because, both these teams, they're standing at top of each of their divisions in the SEC. They're both very good teams, strong offenses, good defenses. So it's going to be a battle.
Yeah, the Bulldogs defense is definitely far and above on a different level than everybody else, allowing 6.9 points a game, which is less than a touchdown. We were talking about that in like weeks 4 and 5, but to be talking about it in week 14 is kind of ridiculous. And they have delivered 3 shutouts, and they're 4th in the nation in sacks. So
yep,
they're going to be giving Bryce Young, John Mechie, Jameson Williams, and Brian Robinson Jr. all that they can handle. And if Alabama plays how they did against Auburn in the first 3 quarters, then, it's a wrap. They're done. Goodbye. You won't even get a chance to get looked at by the college football playoff if you play that way. But I don't think Nick Saban allows his team to play that way. He's probably been after them hot and heavy all week long about just what this week means. He's just Nick Saban, so you can't count him out.
Definitely not. You can't count him out. You got to cover Mechie. I saw Auburn. They didn't cover him. Bryce Young loves Mechie as a target. If you haven't noticed, he targets him more predominantly than any other wide receiver, tight end, whoever's going to be catching the ball. Bryce Young targets Mechie more times than not. I think you can put a huge emphasis on defending him, even if you got to put him in double coverage. Do what you got to do because he's going to be a threat to the Georgia defense. And if they continue to play like they have, obviously the stakes are higher now, more now than ever. Bama's going to have somewhat of that mentality. Even though they do have something to lose, they're going to have to play like they don't have anything to lose to be able to contend with Georgia in this game. They're just going to have to because the stakes are too high and they are essentially the underdog in this scenario. And that's a scenario that Bama doesn't usually find themselves in. So
yeah, Bryce Young needs to be who he was in 3rd and 4th overtime against Auburn the entire game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He needs to just throw the ball down the field with no fear. And, Aunt Hillary would love to see some underdogs pull some wins. Not Iowa, though.
Oh, yeah. She probably wants Iowa to get the dub against Michigan if she wants underdogs, huh?
Yeah, she's a big Sparty fan, too.
Oh, is she really? Okay.
Yeah,
well, I know my mom's a huge Sparty fan. She was rooting for Ohio State to beat Michigan. And I'm like, okay, just hold on. Just hold on a little bit. Because I think I'm the biggest Michigan State fan out of anybody. And I was rooting for Michigan in that game. Yeah. Because, the true Michigan State fans, and I've fought this tooth and nail. I'll fight it a million times over on Twitter, in person, doesn't matter. I'll get in fist fights about it. You're not a true Michigan State fan if you're going to root for Ohio State in any circumstance. Okay, in any circumstance, you can't do it. Okay, I don't care how much you hate Michigan. If you do, you got to root for Michigan. You can't really hate Michigan like that much. Yes, they are a great rival. Yes, when you're playing against them, you want nothing more than to beat them. But in that scenario, the situation is different. So that has to be considered. That's a little PSA for all my Michigan State fans out there. And yeah, Hillary just said she wants U of M to win. Oh, even this weekend. She wants Michigan to win.
Let's go.
And I would, and I'm speaking as a Michigan State fan, 100% day in, day out. I would like to see Michigan win this game too. They've made it this far. They got past, the hardest task of their season, beating Ohio State. They did that in stylish fashion, and they did it with style points. Might as well make it to the college football playoff and see what kind of damage you can do there against SEC teams. This is likely our only representation from the Big Ten that will be showing face. in the college football playoff. So let's see it happen. They made it this far. Let's see them go all the way. I'm all for it. Good deal. That brings us, that's a great transition into the Big Ten championship game. Iowa and Michigan happening at a neutral site. Cody, I know you got a lot. You're probably going to have a mouthful of stuff to say about this game. Let's hear it.
Yeah, Lucas Oil Stadium, home of the Colts here in Indy, and Michigan's first appearance since the Big Ten championship has become a thing. Iowa, they've been here a couple times. So there's a few things that concern me a little, such as that our inexperience to play in games past the Ohio State game, besides bowl games, or even how well we've done in bowl games in the last couple of years. Another thing that really scares me, the Iowa Hawkeyes defense is nothing to laugh at, especially early on in the season. They lead the nation in interceptions with 22, and they have 3 defensive backs with 3+, and then Dwayne Belton, he's another one of those guys tied for first. He's got 5. So, Cade McNamara doesn't throw many picks. He only has 3 on the year. So that's why for them to have that, it would scare me more if he was a dude who just flung the ball over down the field. But he's been pretty careful with it all year. And even when we threw one against the Buckeyes last week, we were able to respond from adversity and finish the job. And just how I've seen all the Michigan players kind of handle themselves since the win. And it's just not Blake Corum anymore posting the Kobe 2-0, job's not done message. It's the whole team starting to post it. Everybody's rallying behind that. And then, the Hawkeyes, they have the Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year, Tyler Linderbaum, and a couple other corn-fed dudes. It's Iowa. They're out there, big farm boys, and can defend their quarterback. But you can't defend David Ojabo, Aiden Hutchinson, Mozzie Smith, Junior Colson. All these boys are coming for Spencer Petras, and he better be ready.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Another comment from Hillary. Michigan has to be aggressive and take deep breaths. Yes, breathing techniques are very essential. And like you said, Cody, you can discount this Iowa team. Corn is a very predominant ingredient in their diet. We know that. They're big guys. They're willing to take a hit. They're willing to deliver a hit. And, especially in this game, they have nothing to lose. And they have everything to gain from, maybe not college football playoff standing wise, but to add a Big Ten title to your resume, that's not something that's bad. So they are looking to get the win. I mean, they're not going to take the field if they don't expect to win, right? So Michigan has to look out for that. Hassan Haskins, Blake Corum, and others are having the right mentality by having that Kobe mentality. 2-0, we're not done yet. They still got, game 3, game 4. So this is their game 3, and once they make it, that's going to be their game 4. Hopefully it's 2 more games after this. That's their game 3, game 4. Game 4 is going to be once they get to the college football playoff. They got to win 2 to claim that ultimate title. They'll be claiming 2 titles, in the course of a month. So they're going to be looking to do that. So it's going to be a battle of the Big Ten divisions, and I'm excited for it. Look out for Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo. What's that hashtag that you try to get trending, or you're currently trying to get trending?
Hashtag Hutch for Heisman.
It's
gotten some traction at some times. I think we had 500 tweets in a day at one point. So it's
not
getting
bad.
Out there. Yeah, we're trying to get it going. Usually it's like I'll get off and after I've been campaigning for a minute, and then I get back on and see that it was like got some traction while I was off or whatever. But I just want to see him at least get some recognition. He already has as far as accolades and awards, but I just think in a year like this, when it could be CJ Stroud, could be Bryce Young, you don't really know who deserves it. If you go back and look at everything, Aiden Hutchinson, he deserves it. Just attracting so much of the offense. The offense's line's attention and all the plays that could have been holding plays that everybody's seen all year, and then breaking the sack record. And just think if, he didn't have to share the sacks with David Ojabo, he could have a lot more. But besides that, what else did I want to say here? Hassan Haskins. Enjoy every single run from now on that man has as a Michigan Wolverine, because he has declared for the draft he will be going to test his talents next year in the NFL. So enjoy it. I don't know if his eligibility was up anyway, but yeah, just enjoy it and look for Blake Corum to be ready to prove himself going forward as RB1 next year. Dude is electric. And then if you just want to talk a little about these patches, then I can talk a little bit about them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the patches. So in light of the Oxford High School shooting, rest in peace and prayers to all the individuals affected by this tragedy happening really close to home for us here in Michigan. Michigan has opted to put the TM on their jerseys, the 42, for Tate Meyer. He attempted to disarm the shooter, and he had to sacrifice his own life in doing that. And he was an athlete himself. Michigan has decided to put those patches on their jerseys, and big props to Michigan. Huge integrity move. And I think that's really cool that they're doing that. And it's just a terrible tragedy. We need to stop this. And there's got to be something that we can do as a community, as a world, as a society to eliminate this from happening. And unfortunately, there's a lot of different moving parts with this, but it's a huge integrity move from Michigan to be able to do this.
Yeah. Just speaks to the kind of program that they are. And yeah, that is the Oxford, the Block O. And I don't know if you did, but I played Oxford in all kinds of sports growing up in high school. And I mean, every school shooting is a tragedy. And like you said, it needs to be addressed, figure out ways that we can stop this from happening in our places of education. But for it to happen just 30 miles away from us, I've been inside that school before, so it's just a little bit different. And yeah, so Tate Meyer, Hannah St. Juliana, Madison Baldwin, and Justin Chilling were the lives lost. Those 4 hearts under TM42 represent Tate, and then those other 3 who lost their lives so senselessly on that dark day. And I think it just gives Michigan another edge. You said Iowa's playing for something too, but I think these Michigan boys are going to be fired up and are going to bring a win home for Tate Meyer and Oxford.
Yeah, and that's really great. I hope they do that and they do their best to get the win for those lives lost. And I think just some integrity has to be pointed to both teams, because you see Iowa kind of, they have their thing with the Children's Hospital for their games. It's a big promoter for them, being right next to that hospital where their stadium's located. So both these teams really that's close to home. They're playing for something that is more than football, and they really show that through their program. Their different incentives that they promote within their program. So I think it's really a big integrity move from Michigan, especially in this scenario, to be able to show support to both the lives lost and the entire community of Oxford that has been affected by this tragedy.
And it's nice sometimes that we can step away from the sports aspect of it and recognize that games like this being played, no matter who wins or loses, there's always going to be somebody winning in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly. Yeah. Playing for something that's bigger than football itself is awesome to see. And to see that sportsmanship be shown, especially in light of a tragedy, is special. So good deal. We'll wrap it up there.
Picking up real quick before we wrap it up, just ended on a little bit of a lighter note. We just could pick the games for tonight. We got the Conference USA Championship and the Pac-12.
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's make a pick.
All right. UTSA and Western Kentucky. This is in the Alamo Dome, San Antonio, Texas. Western Kentucky is a 3.5-point favorite, even though UTSA is at 11-1. Western Kentucky is 8-4, and UTSA won the first matchup by 6 points. I'm going to go with the bettors, and I'm taking Western Kentucky to find a way to win behind the arm of Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, I like Western Kentucky too. Give me a -3.5. I think that's maybe a little ballsy of a bet when you're considering the most popular differential between any college football game is 3. Even if the Hilltoppers win by 3, the 3.5 for those of you guys that aren't invested in betting. Hopefully you guys watch this show enough where you're invested in betting, you know how the scenarios work. But if you lose by 3 and you have to cover 3.5, you essentially don't cover the bet. But you get better odds that way compared to taking Western Kentucky or any team that's -3.5 money line. You get much better odds. So give me Western Kentucky, Bailey Zappi, -3.5 against UTSA and the Roadrunners. I like them. I like how they played against Michigan State and my Spartans. So they got a strong offense. They just got to hold it together on defense and limit the Roadrunners.
The over-under is set at 73. The first time they played, they hit 98 points. What you got happening tonight?
Give me the over. Give me the over. I like it. I really don't have faith in the Hilltoppers defense. Neither do I have the faith in the Roadrunners defense either to combat against this Hilltoppers offense. So give me the over on that. I think they'll get high 70s, maybe into the 80s.
Cool. My key players of each, obviously Bailey Zappi leads the nation in touchdowns and yards through the air. And then on the other side, watch out for running back Sincere McCormick.
That's going to be a huge battle. I'm going to be looking for that game. Huge opportunities for the bettors, especially these high-scoring games with very high over-unders. So you got to look out for that. Over-under 73, like Cody mentioned, and I'm taking the over there. So you're taking the over too?
Yep, I got the over as well. Yeah, Bailey Zappi is not going to be able to be stopped. He's going to be putting on a show. The next game here is another rematch. Utah is hosting Oregon, or not hosting. This is Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, but Oregon versus Utah, a rematch. Utah won the first matchup 38-7 in convincing fashion. This was in Utah. Utah is a 2.5-point favorite. Who do you got?
Give me Utah minus 2.5. I like it. Even if they win by a field goal, I think Oregon's going to give them more of a better. They're going to be coming out with a vengeance. This is a revenge game. There's a lot to play for. And there's a lot of hatred I think is going to be coming out of the Oregon camp just because Utah really ruined their chances about making it to the college football playoff and staying in that top 4 position. So give me Utah. I think they're going to come out and get the job done. They're going to outplay Oregon again. And this is going to be a battle. This is going to be, you don't usually see the rematch happen, so close to the regular season ending, having it finalized with the conference title on the line. So I don't know. I think it's good. This is a tough one. This is definitely a tougher one, I think, than the Western Kentucky UTSA game, but I like Utah a lot. I like their chemistry. Cameron Rising, they know what they're doing, and he can really run the offense. So give me Utah minus 2.5.
Yep. Cam Rising, Utah, not a bad bet to take. I think that somehow Oregon is going to find a way tonight and upset them. I think playing standalone game, I mean, not standalone because there's also a championship, but basically all eyes are going to be on Utah and Oregon tonight. And they went deep in the film and studied Utah's 3 losses, and they're going to try to find ways to capitalize on their deficiencies. I say it goes over the 57.5. I say it goes over.
All right. Let me see what I want for the over-under. I got to do some quick mental math here. Well, let's look at the score of the last game. What was that score? 38-7. So that under would have hit in considerable fashion. Strong performance from the Utah Utes defense. Give me the under. I think it's going to be a battle. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I say both teams don't leave the 20s. I would say mid-20s. I'd say 27. I'd say 27-21. I bet that takes it.
All right.
I like it.
You heard it here first.
I like it. Good deal. Cody, you got any final words before we let the people go for the weekend?
Hey, just enjoy the last weekend of college football before bowl season and the playoffs. Really enjoy watching some of the players on your respective teams take handoffs, throw passes, catch balls, everything of the like, and don't take it for granted.
Definitely don't take it for granted. It's gone before you know it. We know that. We're living examples of it. I tell Cody, I tell all the gin guys this all the time. I still remember taking the Instagram video of the JT Daniels, DJ Eungale, Clemson, Georgia game where I took Georgia and hit the first bet of the year in the college football world. So, that seems like it was just yesterday. So it flies by. Enjoy it while it's here, and don't take any moment for granted. That's my final words of wisdom going into the weekend. And enjoy football. It's going to be a great weekend. It's really going to set the stage for the college football playoff going into the rest of December. So lots of exciting stuff happening. Good deal, guys. Thank you again for tuning into the Gin College podcast. Make sure to follow all of our social media outlets. I'll put the link tree at the bottom of the page, and it's in the descriptions of all the podcasts and the videos that will be posted on YouTube. Make sure to check out all of our social media outlets. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. And we'll be in touch with you guys very soon. So thank you guys for watching and listening in. I'm your host, as always, John J. II with the Gin College podcast alongside Cody Almasi. Have a great weekend.